All right, here we go. Here we go. We are back, guys. Welcome to Rankable episode 50. I'm your host, as usual, Jared Thomas, Senior Account Executive at iPullRank. And damn, I can't believe we're at episode 50, man. So shout out to Rankable. Shout out to us, man. 50 weeks of doing this, 50 weeks of preparation, 50 weeks of having great conversations. Man, we thank everybody for your support, man. So as usual, I've got the best co-host in the game, the man gen manager, Garrett Sussman. And we have a very... my man. And we have a very special topic for you guys, honest marketing. So we're going to go through what honest marketing is, how to take some of the BS out of marketing messaging, how to better connect with your customer. And we have a special guest today that's going to walk us through some of these things and give us some insight. So he has over 15 years of experience in the digital marketing industry. He helps brands grow through digital marketing and specializes in crafting content that educates and converts tomorrow's customers. So he's worked with brands such as AOL, Infusionsoft, OfferPad, and currently works for communication software giant Nextiva. So I'd like to introduce our good friend, Joe Manna. How are you, brother?
Awesome. I love it. Man, that's a fantastic intro. So thank you so much. I'm doing great.
Yeah, man. Thank you for joining, man. We're excited to have you here. So for all those just tuning in, we just wanted to go back to the main topic of the discussion today, which is going to be honest marketing. So you're probably thinking, what the heck is honest marketing, right? So essentially what it is, guys, it's just authentic marketing, right? It's a way for you to share what you do to those who value it the most, right? So connecting with your customers that most align with your values, who need your product, is what honest marketing is all about, right? Not putting up, things that are, culturally correct or just because it's, you're following the wave. It's being who you are and connecting with your core audience base. And that's what we're going to talk about today. What are some of the pros and cons? So let's start it off from there, guys. I would love to hear your thoughts on it, Joe. Like, what do you consider honest marketing, and what do you think are some of the benefits of doing honest marketing?
Yeah. So basically, if I was going to sum it up in one sentence, right, honest marketing really comes down to, marketing and describing your product or service without selling your soul. Right. And a lot of marketers, they get into this gig, they have, a demanding boss or demanding leader, that says, hey, we got to get these leads. We have a number to hit. We got to get it any way possible. And what that forces, what these high, metrics, high numbers result in is people doing unnatural acts to get it. Right. Yeah. And the SEO industry, by and large, is not a stranger to that. Right. Sometimes Google rewards handsomely for bad behavior. Now, lately, they're cracking down. Obviously, they have been, but overall, in a broader sense, honest marketing is being really clear about the value you provide people, being transparent about it, and not pulling any punches when it comes to, areas that you can improve in, and being humble and direct with your customers.
You're bringing in the heat, just starting off.
I know. Like, you just lit the fuse, and I just see it going. I'm like, oh man, I'm excited.
Well, it's interesting too, Joe, right? Because like you have, it's more than just like what the rules are. Like, you look at like the healthcare industry, and like you have, where there's actually laws against, not claiming results that are not actually real, and that breaks laws. But then there's also like the ethical kind of perspective when it comes to marketing. So like as a marketer, how do you approach that and kind of establish what your own sort of like honesty and authenticity is?
Yeah, I think it okay. So what guides as really great marketing, in terms of the user experience, right, and in terms of being ethical and honest, it should not be a body of laws, right, from a government or an industry. It has to be within, like yourself, right? You have to establish your own true values and core values and actually live by them, right? And then actually be able to compare and sort of assess, hey, is our message, are our activities living up to these values that we set for ourselves? If you can't live up to yourself, then there's no way that your customers will see that you will live up to your promises, right? I think pharmaceuticals is a lot different because there's a lot of laws, mandating all that, and sometimes it's too much. But I think like marketers, most people, listening to this podcast, should not really be taking cues from Pfizer, in terms of how far they should market themselves or position themselves, right? They should really be setting, look at how they buy products themselves, how you buy products yourselves.
Yeah.
And yes, this even includes B2B buyers, because B2B buyers like, well, that's not B2C. We sell to other businesses. No, you're still selling to people. And I'm not, I'm going to beat that cliche to death. But I mean, the whole point is you have to really think about the way you evaluate buying decisions and be able to act on that, right? And be able to take out, because people hate being tricked. People hate being deceived. They hate wasting time. They hate going, all the way through a very long sales process. Then you finally get to quoting and a proposal, this and that, but all to find out that, it just wasn't a good fit to begin with. Right. And then that makes the next vendor, the next company that they do business with, the next product, that's a huge hurdle to sort of level up from, right? In terms, and that's why there's a lot of resistance. There's a lot of, sort of skepticism in general in marketing, and it continues to increase.
Absolutely. And that's why cutting through the noise is so important, right? Because I think you hit it, and we talk about this a lot too, Joe. Like we talk about frictionless sales, right? So for me being on the sales side, right, you don't want to go through the proposal, you don't want to go through the quote. And plus there's so many different touch points nowadays that I can reach you and interact with you in an organic manner where it doesn't feel like a sale, right? Yeah. And then another thing that you touched on, I think was really important. Most brands, I think this is why they fail. I think most brands don't recognize that they have a brand personality.
Yes.
And that's the, whether you're pharmaceutical, whether you're B2B, B2C, whatever the case may be, like why is there a lack of creativity for these brands, right? Like for instance, if you say pharmaceutical, right, it would be really funny if Viagra did some funny shit, right? Right?
I know.
Right? Like it shouldn't be hard to get hard or something. I'm just throwing it out there, but just something like that.
Well, the thing about that is like that fine print about, an erection might last for 4 hours or longer. That was its selling point. That made it, wow. That was proof right there. It doesn't get any better than that. Right. Where in a world of gimmicks and everything else. So, but I hear what you mean in that. Basically, like you have to be able to set your own standard and live up to it and live it through. Right. You can't just hide behind a wall of fine print for it.
Exactly.
And a big part of that, right, Joe, is like marketing jargon is almost a problem at this point. And you're a copywriter. So it's like, how do you deal with that kind of when you are forming the way that you're going to represent the brand? How do you fight the internal marketing jargon voice in your head?
Honestly, so when it comes to distilling that down and really creating copy, right? I sort of take like a creative brief, so to speak, where I know what the product is, and I really distill it down into the buyers as if I was looking for that service, right? And I always have to assume, like most businesses, most brands, when they talk about their products and services, they're the ones most interested in it. You have to talk to someone who's not interested in it and be able to, shift them from having really minimal awareness, minimal stake in the game to really, developing that, right? And moving them to the next step. It's not going to be all in one shot. So what I mean by that, like in terms of how brands can do that really well and improve their clarity is to really intentionally avoid technical terms. Save the technical terms and the data sheets and the jargon later on as they are, deeper into sort of the consideration phase, right? As they are really deeply considering and they're exploring, what does the onboarding look like, and they start asking that, right? And they start volunteering that. But what I see a lot of companies doing is that they just throw it, literally, if you're writing acronyms a lot, that's already a red flag. If you're writing acronyms in your copy, you definitely want to think about why are you doing it. Now, there is a good reason for it. If you are an ABM technology company, right, and those are your specific buyers, and ABM is conditioned in the buyer's mind already, you are already excluding the people who don't get it, and that could be a valid reason for that. But just don't be surprised when you say ABM and SDR and XDR and all these other phrases, but you're trying to sell to a classic small business where those terms don't resonate with them. So it's all about what is relevant and and what resonates with with the audience.
Right, because it's not like they're trying to buy like Android-built monuments. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's very popular, but in the ABM world, Android-built monuments, you have to know. No, talking about account-based marketing.
Yeah.
But that was a really great point too that you said too, Joe. Because like, what's the end goal of marketing, right? The end goal of marketing is to identify a problem that you may have not known that you were even aware of, and make me say I want to pay attention to it, right? So I would love to know what you guys' thoughts are. Like, how should we be judging these type of marketing campaigns, right? Like, are we judging marketing based off the brand awareness, or are we judging off the actual result? I had this conversation with a marketer the other day, and I thought it was really intriguing, and I would love to hear from you guys. Like, so what are your takes on that?
Yeah, I mean, I hate to say the word "it depends." I know that comes up on every podcast.
No, man, keep it real. You're keeping it real.
But the reality is, like when it comes to, the purpose of marketing is to alter someone's decision making, right? To guide them towards the right decision. Hopefully, it's the right decision for them, and not just the right decision for you as a business, right? And the right decision for them is that people are always looking to do. Get better at different roles in their life. If it's like an IT person, right? They don't want to get an IT software that that's going to occupy an additional 8 hours a day because they're already busy for 8 hours a day. They're looking for a solution to help them become a better person, or a better employee, so to speak, right? And if hopefully your solution can help make that happen, and if it doesn't, you have to rethink that. And they're going to tell you that. I mean, they're going to ultimately, at the end of the day, I think where I see sales falling apart is when the expectations were kind of mismatched in terms of the value a solution provides to to the reality, right? The perception versus the reality. And I think that is incumbent on marketers to make sure that is seamless all the way through. And to be able to prove that and, be able to demonstrate that.
Yeah.
But
and how to
I'm kind of curious about your other thoughts on that.
You want to go?
I think you make a great point. I mean, when you're thinking about, because I don't know, you guys, whether you're in sales or if you've been in support, being on the other side of a dishonest marketer is so painful. Like what you're saying about if the customer is like tricked and they get to the, you oversold and underdelivered, it can happen in the agency world too.
Oh yeah.
Yes,
you have to be on the same page where you're not putting A, the product, and B, the people behind the product in a bad spot, because that's not going to help in the long run. And if your focus is revenue, then you're only going to have a short-term customer, especially like in SaaS world, like, short-term customer who's going to realize it real quick, and then it's going to hurt the brand.
Right. If you spend $1,000 acquiring a customer and they're gone in 2 months and you have, $100 a month in revenue, that's a very unprofitable customer acquisition campaign.
Yeah.
Right. And you have to really look at the big picture, the overall customer value, and make sure it proves that. And sometimes that means you have a lower number of customers that you win, but if they stay on the books longer, you don't have to acquire as many customers, as much as you need to.
Exactly. And I think you hit the nail on it. And it's the same thing with salespeople and just the misalignment with sales, right? The same thing, right? For I know I'll go through this quote and I'll go through the point, but I saw this on Adweek. Bad advertising can alienate a portion of your current and future potential customer base. According to the publication, 1/3 of all Americans will refuse to purchase a brand because of previous bad advertising campaigns, even if it was changed or removed from all media outlets. I thought that was astonishing. Like that's crazy. And what do you guys think? How does a brand measure the negative impacts that it may be happening from let's say a bad, what's a good campaign, a bad campaign that went out from a big brand? Let's think of
it was the Pepsi Kylie Jenner one from the Super Bowl back in the day.
That one was good. I was thinking about what's the other one, the clothing company with the when they had the monkey shirt. You know what I'm talking. You guys know what I'm talking about too, man. It was a big brand.
Because it was like a culturally offensive.
Yes,
like was it like it was a fancy brand? Like I don't want to just throw brands out there.
It was like a Forever 21 or something. It was some big brand like that, right? But essentially, I would love to know how would they view the negative impact or how it had on the revenue, and how would they know what marketing campaigns actually recovered it?
Right. I mean, I think the impact. I think for most people, kind of listening here, like the real impact of that dishonest marketing, right? Or that you make a failure, right? You step onto a landmine, with your brand, you make a bad mistake, and you don't address it right away.
Yeah.
What happens is indifference. People just walk away. They're not going to take the time to tell you no necessarily. They're just not going to purchase you, or they're not going to purchase you again. Or later on, they will, when it's time for an account renewal, or they basically, they could call and cancel, if that's the type of service that you're in. But simply, it's orders will just dry up. It's really indifference. Negative campaigns where consumers are protesting you and trying to protest you and, like do petitions and everything. That's almost a good sign, because it shows that you have their attention, right? And brands, if they mess up, and brands do mess up on occasion, if you mess up, it's really what you do with it, and how quick you respond, and how forceful you respond, and what kind of real action you provide. And it's essentially like consumers are more tolerant of that, but they're more tolerant of the conversation for it. Like, they're willing to hear you out, but they don't necessarily, like, most consumers are not accepting, that you make a donation to the World Wildlife Fund and then call it done. People and consumers, and there's plenty of excellent research on this from, like Edelman Trust Barometer, right? Continuing research shows that consumers care about brands, and their money is directed towards brands that improve society and improves the welfare of their workers. Right.
But isn't that a slippery slope then? Because when we start talking, when we get to the revenue, and we know that, hey, people want to see, or people want to spend their dollars with companies that values best represent them, right? So it's an opportunity for brands to be disingenuous, to meet a certain customer.
That's true. Right. So I think so. Another idea to keep in mind is that consumers today are getting, like, most of these brands, the majority of consumers are getting younger. Right. Yeah. And what that means is the level of trust that's needed goes higher. And to establish trust, people have their BS meter finely tuned to detect it. Right. And they look at it well beyond the press release, well beyond the financial donation, well beyond, however flashy, a careers page is. It comes through. Employees, they look up other brands on Glassdoor. They look through the reviews. They look through the real comments, right? So people, digital natives know how to see through a lot of that, right? And I'm not saying older people don't. I'm just saying, statistically speaking, we're seeing that generation, 34 years old or younger, definitely rate trust as a higher level of importance in their decision-making process. So because it's more important, people are attuned to look for it well beyond price itself, like for a product or service. But I think you're exactly right. You should not, brands should not, go through and just, pander to an audience, because they'll see through it. Right. Absolutely. And it doesn't sustain itself. Ultimately, what's the next campaign going to do? Like, a company can't be built just on pandering. Like, it has to be real, has to be honest. And I think that's what consumers are ultimately looking for.
And it's interesting too, because I almost feel like the brand tone can be tied, like the safety of it can be tied to the size of the organization, because you do see a lot of success and authenticity with, like, unabashed, polarized perspectives. Like, I think about Basecamp and, hey, when they came out with, like, how they address privacy as an email client versus Google Mail, or how they address, their remote working policies. But then, on the other side, you think about, like, Ben and Jerry, who are, like, making a bet, a stake in the sand of like, how they stand on Israel and how they stand on cultural issues. Like, you can go either side, but you're never going to see a massive enterprise, I feel like, go one way or the other. Like, you'll never see, like, to that point.
No, absolutely. I mean, some brands are deeply staked in social issues, and I think that's fine. I just think there's going to be honest with it, right? Like, it's not, it doesn't surprise anyone that Ben and Jerry's, where they stand on social issues, right? I think, a company like Raytheon, probably has some context that you have to consider about kind of their role, in, from making household, thermometers, to missile systems, right? I mean, there's a lot of, you have to really weigh, what their line of business is, who their consumers are, to the actual products and the impact that they make this, to the world, and I think like that's in the Edelman report, in just, uncovering like what are consumers really looking for, and it's different around the world, but what is consistent is localized issues that matter, in the at least at the country level, or at least at the individual level, what's important to them, right? Versus just the whims of a CEO proudly throwing their weight behind an organization, or a social issue.
Well, that's a good point too.
Exactly.
I mean, how do you kind of immortalize that in the brand? Like, how do you feel about various content teams that you've been a part of like documenting that tone and making sure there are the checks and balances within the governance to make sure that you are maintaining that authenticity? Or what would you do if you were part of a brand that like wasn't, and you're like kind of want to call them out, like for the company you work for?
Yeah.
Great.
Well,
question.
I mean, I think it's always good to have a strong voice internally and be able to speak to that. For instance, sometimes it comes from a place of just unawareness. For instance, if a company was doing a Black Awareness Month, right? You don't want to have it just come out by a bunch of old white men, just coming out with Black Awareness Month. Here it is, February. And like. That's it. And there's no action. There's no representation at the organizational level. There's no representation, in the community and making a further investment, and outreach, talent acquisition, coaching, mentoring, development, all that kind of stuff. Like there's real actions. Like if there's actions behind it, I think it's great. But if it's simply just to have a campaign at the end of the month, it's no different than, hey, this is, vanilla ice cream flavor day, and it's here today, gone tomorrow. Right. And I think like, ultimately for marketing efforts, for marketers to improve, they need to make sure their marketing sticks and they leave a memorable impression. And one way you can do that is by being authentic and just living through your values and proving it out and building out sustainable programs, and not just thinking about a tweet that you have to put out, by 2 p.m. today.
Yeah. I also feel like a lot of storytelling isn't utilized enough in campaigns. I feel like for me, and I think, and I would love to get you guys' take on this, because I hate when a brand actually makes a decision on something that impacts the business and then they pull back when they get audience feedback. For instance, OnlyFans. So what do you guys think about that, right? So because that is honest marketing for them, because we know why they wanted to shift their business, right? There's better advertising dollars, there's more revenue, it's scalable that way, right? But they can't alienate a whole bunch of customers who've been making a livelihood from selling, nudity and all that other stuff. So what is that honest? Like, what is that in that case? What do you guys think?
Go for it, Garrett.
Well, I think with any situation, whether it's a person or a corporation, you don't necessarily always know the whole story behind closed doors. For sure. I know what my association with the brand is and what I know of them. Maybe there is a different perception, like in a different community that I'm not aware of, or maybe there's like a different product. To your point, if it is my perception of like, and yours of like OnlyFans being associated with that, then is that you're completely shifting the brand, and I think that is a risk. I think there are potentially consequences. You do have the backlash. Like if you're not honest with who your brand is and own that, like people can change. Like organizations can change, but it is a kind of biting the hand that feeds you if you're, kind of, abandoning your team. I don't know, Joe. What do you think?
So I looked at the old OnlyFans thing again, purely from an outside perspective.
Of course, we're all outside. We have families, guys.
But no. But I mean, I looked at that from the outside in. Is that they were able to create their own conflict, right? I mean, I'm familiar with the world of merchant gateways and how those works from a financial standpoint. And the fact is, payment processors have been around for decades. processing adult content businesses, right? CC Bill being the most prolific one, right? And essentially, like, there's no way, legitimately, that OnlyFans was somehow pressured into, canceling, the very thing that made their business, of adult content, right? So what they were able to do is that they created a conflict where they themselves became the hero by the end of the week. And I'm a little suspicious that I wonder if that's a really spectacular marketing campaign, because they were able to cut through the barriers. I mean, the story was covered on virtually every mainstream news outlet, in a way that, like, a rival like Pornhub just can't be covered.
Exactly.
In mainstream media, it broke through the filter. Now the question is, here's what their risk is. If they actually do get squeezed by a payment processor next time, will their creators, will their users be as forgiving and patient to stay on board? Because then they'll see that they've been tricked. And I think this time they get a pass. They did get a lot of media and a lot of coverage out of it. But I mean, I don't ultimately think like this is something they can repeat. That. But I think if it was legitimate, and again, I didn't read the announcement in detail, but they should be able to be more specific. Name some names, be specific. What parts of their, Visa, network agreement, is in violation, and then put the pressure on having the creators pressure, the payment gateways to make a change rather than the company.
Now you're cooking with grease, because all campaigns, even though they got extensive coverage, all coverage doesn't mean it's good coverage, right? I think the bigger problem for their business is the fact that content creators started to look internally and say, what do I do? And now, do I need to migrate these to my own channels, which is going to have a long-term effect? Because now I can't, if I'm a single mother in, an inner city somewhere with 3 kids, and I'm getting $2,000 a week from OnlyFans. Now I'm thinking, what the hell I'm going to do? And now how do I sustain that long term? And that could be, now multiply that by 1 million users, right? So like,
and most people can't just open up the Square app, or open up a Stripe account and start taking payments like that. And that was where OnlyFans made that a safe and legitimate space.
Right.
Exactly. Exactly.
So so I mean, if they need to protect that, and that's really what the value they provide, their network on that.
Yeah. And then and I know we're running up on time, guys. I would love to know, because obviously we all know what happened last year. COVID hit, and then we saw a barrage of ads. Hey, we're all in this together and all that stuff, right? Who do you think did it really well? And what do you know any brands that might have not, right? How does a brand break through the noise when we're all dealing with the same issue? Like, what would have been a good way to attack the market during COVID without saying that?
I mean, I'll be honest. A lot of the ads, they lived their course over the course of a month. Like they had their time over the course of a month.
For sure.
What eventually, drained me was hearing them for the next 10 months about how they, we thank our workers, thank our people on the front lines, right? But there was no substance behind it. It was like it was a branding play without like a memorable impact. How did they help their workers on the front line? I think about what makes it memorable. And I'm really drawing a blank. I couldn't tell you one specific one, other than Kroger / Fry's locally. Man, they hammered the ads about thanking our workers for being clean and whatever. But I have to think, like, for the amount of money they spent on that advertising campaign compared to the amount of money I've given them, it's a grocery chain. Yeah, I'm not sure if it works. I'm not sure if it sustains itself. I mean, it's advertising for the sake of advertising when you don't really have a strong message. I think like there's other ways that you can direct those efforts, right, in a more meaningful way. I think what I did see on a positive campaign effort that was memorable, not necessarily advertising, but was the company Square. So Square actually really doubled down in terms of, how the value they provide businesses. So they did this whole campaign. It was on their website, and I think it's still there. It was basically about, food truck owners, right? People, mobile businesses that are truly empowered to be able to, transact safely amid COVID. They they did the storytelling, just as we were saying, right?
Yeah.
They really doubled down on that. So it wasn't about, 2.9% at a 30-cent, transaction fee. It was really about, hey, we're helping these entrepreneurs, live the life they want and
Exactly.
do so safely and serve their communities and become staples of their community. And I think like that's where storytelling, can actually help a brand, become a lot more direct and honest and be able to yield a longer term result out of it.
For sure.
The fact is, I remembered it. I mean, I last
Yeah.
visited that maybe a year ago.
Yeah.
You
stirred my memory of, I remember Toast, which was a point of sale software service. And they did a whole, because they were brilliant because they created the ability to make it easier for restaurants that were struggling for people to buy gift certificates to use later. So it's like that was one of the most brilliant, because not only were they helping their product and getting more people to use Toast, but they're actually helping all of these struggling businesses be able to sustain longer by actually getting money in their coffers until they could open up again, which I thought was really well done.
I would have thought a brilliant one, like say the Kroger example, right? Instead of spending a couple $1,000,000 on that advertising, why don't you just craft a story and say, hey, we're spending this $1,000,000 and giving it back to these employees who were thinking in this damn ad, right? We spent the ad just to show you guys that, hey, we don't care about the marketing. We want to know that these guys appreciate it. And because of it, we spend an extra $10 million and got everybody a 3% raise or whatever the case may be, right? Same thing with Amazon, right? You're saying thank you for our workers, but then they're making $15, working 12-hour shifts in a spot that's COVID infested, right?
Well, and the thing is, this isn't abstract. That's exactly what the brand did. They used these ads to kind of whitewash a real issue where I think Kroger had, 3 or 4 stores in California. I forget the location exactly, but, where these employees, instead of paying them hazard pay, for, a few months, they just basically closed down the stores. Now there's probably other issues, in terms of, the revenue, and maybe the stores were already on the chopping block, but you can't neglect the, the timing of it, of these employees were, due hazard pay, and instead of that, they closed the stores and they just slammed, a ton of whitewashed, advertising to drown out the negativity. And I see through it because we're savvy, marketers, but I think, the public is going to wise up to a lot of that. And that style, you can't reach people through broadcast media as much as you could, 10 years ago. I personally, I use Spotify. And I'm the frequent target of those audio ads more than, the local TV stations. So, definitely brands are going to have to diversify and kind of think about different ways that they spend their ad dollars.
Absolutely. It's so much room for creativity. It's insane. And the fact that it's not happening in real time is just shocking to me. But I know we're coming up on time, guys, and I just want to recap, the conversation for those listening. So 3 quick ways that we could implement honest marketing. Tell your unique impact story from the start, right? Have authentic 2-way discussions with your customers, and remember that your brand has a personality, right? So understand what that is and how you can better connect with your customers to get the desired outcome, and avoid the social responsibility trap, right? Do what's right because it's right, not because it sounds good in your ads, right? So those are just 3 top level things, and also something to keep in mind for marketers and sales folks alike, right? Sometimes we look at our customers, we don't even look at them as people. We look at them as a means to get to our goals, right? And I know for me as a salesperson, I used to fall into that trap a lot. Like say, for instance, I'm trying to get in touch with you, Joe. I'm not thinking about Joe the person. You're just some name I just took from Zoom info, right? And I'm emailing you, and now my messaging is flat. You're like, who the hell is this guy? And then nothing happens because of it, right? So really get to know that person you're trying to communicate with, right? If you really want something from them, you have to understand them. And that goes across from marketing and sales, guys. So keep that top of mind. Do better marketing. Don't be afraid to be creative. Entertain some people. You don't have to be just selling.
And one just final point that I'll just end with, is essentially I'm not saying marketing campaigns are dead. In any fantastic marketing campaign, just like you said, it's a 2-way street. People want to participate in relevant marketing that engages them. So give them something that they want, engage them, be honest about it, don't deceive, but the half-assed ones won't deliver the results that you expect. Boom. Right? You have to make sure it's authentic, and you have to be all in about it, and you can't just fake it till you make it doesn't scale.
Doesn't scare. There you go.
Put that on a t-shirt, right?
That's a great way to end off, man. But Joe, we both enjoyed this conversation, man. I could keep going, but I want to keep you longer, brother. But just want to say thank you for taking time out your day. It was a pleasure, man. We're certainly rooting for you. You have an invitation anytime you want, man, to come back on. And anything you need from us, you know we got you, brother. But thank you for everybody watching. And Joe, I would know you're about to say something.
Oh no, excellent! I really appreciate both you and Garrett, and making this a very warm experience here. So I definitely look forward to it.
I'm glad you enjoyed, brother.
Thank you for everybody watching. Ben & Jerry's and ice cream in Arizona next time I'm out there. Okay.
Yeah, I got you. I'll make sure I got you covered.
But always a pleasure, man. Thank you again for everybody watching. Joe, pleasure again, man. And we see you guys next week for Rankable. I forgot who we have as the guest. I'll tell you guys when you see the ads on LinkedIn.
Congrats on 50, dude. Episode 50. That's awesome.
Episode 50, man. 50 weeks. It's been crazy, man. I'd have never thought we'd have got to 50. I'd have never thought we'd have cool people like yourself, Joe, and people we've spoken to, man. It's been unreal. So feel free to connect with Garrett, connect with Joe, connect with myself, man. We're cool people. We're open, always willing to help. And, we see you guys next week for another good one, man.
All right. Excellent. Take care, guys.
Take care, guys.
All right. Bye.